Hello, I'm HomoArrosor. Today, we're breaking down the definitive reality of the digital asset space as it stands right now in July 2026. Look, we are not looking at projections here. We aren't dealing in hypotheticals or guessing about what might happen next. We are examining the absolute, interconnected facts of federal securities law, massive macroeconomic energy shifts, and the precise functioning architecture of decentralized computing. The landscape has permanently altered. It's a completely different game now. The convergence of the SEC's policy shift, the statutory permanence of the Clarity Act, and the operational rollout of SoloHost has created a final unbreakable link. In this new reality, Bitcoin is mathematically forced to surrender its power infrastructure to artificial intelligence, while Pi Network is perfectly engineered to absorb that exact same AI computing demand. So let's dismantle exactly how this is happening. To really understand this paradigm shift, we're going to walk through 6 distinct parts. First, we'll cover the SEC policy shift, then the Clarity Act legal protection. Third, the massive clash of Bitcoin versus AI energy. Fourth, how the Pi network specifically absorbs that demand. Fifth, SoloHost and node computing. And finally, we will tie it all together into the new operational reality. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the SEC policy shift, the fundamental reclassification of crypto. The legal and regulatory landscape of digital assets didn't just casually evolve over the last few months. Its entire foundation shifted completely. And the architecture of this new digital economy rests firmly on 3 converging pillars. Because as of July 15, 2026, regulators absolutely ceased viewing crypto as some monolithic speculative asset class. That old way of thinking is just gone. We have 3 massive forces converging simultaneously right now. First, you have a newly established legal sandbox defined by the SEC's reclassification. Right in the middle, there is this unprecedented macroeconomic demand being driven by the sheer, unyielding energy hunger of AI. And then, completing the triad, you have the decentralized supply provided by massive node networks. These 3 forces converge perfectly on one undeniable concept: crypto as a computational utility. Regulators now legally recognize that specific decentralized networks are not investment schemes. They are critical computational infrastructure actively servicing the booming AI sector. Let's really get into the weeds of the March 2026 ruling because the SEC drove a definitive legal wedge right into the market. Think about the old model, the speculative token. Historically, regulators would look at a project and ask, okay, is this an investment contract? Are people just relying on a third party for returns? But that's the past. The SEC explicitly separated the token from the computational work that it compensates. The ruling dictates, as a matter of legal fact, that protocol rewards are strictly defined as payments for provided computational services, not investment returns. The actual form of payment, meaning receiving a digital token, no longer defines the legal nature of the act itself. What actually matters now is the economic activity performed. If a node provides computation, validation, and network maintenance, the reward it receives is recognized as a legitimate commercial payment for a physical utility service. It's a complete reframing of how value is legally recognized in this space. Moving on to part 2, we need to talk about the Clarity Act legal protection, which established a vital statutory safe harbor. Now, you might be thinking, well, an SEC administrative interpretation is great, but couldn't that just change with new leadership? And you'd normally be right, but that is where the Clarity Act comes in. The Clarity Act is the legislative lock-in. It seals the safe harbor, literally turning what could have been a temporary policy bridge into a permanent statutory fortress. This law goes way beyond simply deciding what is a security and what is a commodity. It intentionally builds an ironclad regulatory perimeter around the physical provision of infrastructure. It permanently shields developers, computational suppliers, and node operators from ever being classified as financial brokers or falling under strict investment contract scrutiny again. The rules of the road are locked in. Let me break down the exact technology-neutral language codified within this legislation, because every word matters. The Clarity Act explicitly protects individuals from facing securities regulation solely for participating in specific, defined activities. These protected activities include providing computational work, operating a node or Oracle service, and providing network bandwidth. Notice the specific terminology they chose. It doesn't limit protection to proof of work or proof of stake. It uses the broad, encompassing phrase, computational work. This law intentionally isolates the physical provision of processing power and network resources as an independent, fully legal infrastructure service. And this statutory language perfectly aligns with and permanently protects the exact decentralized computing architecture that Pi Network operates on. So with the legal reality set, let's look at part 3, Bitcoin versus AI energy. This is the ultimate power struggle happening right now. With the legal foundation permanently secured, we face the objective macroeconomic conflict currently defining the entire global market. I'm talking about the physical battle for the world's most finite resource, electricity. The tracks of our physical infrastructure are fundamentally diverging. The next dollar of capital and the next megawatt of power, they no longer default to Bitcoin. That era is over. That capital and power are flowing directly into predictive markets and AI compute. Bitcoin is actively fighting a losing battle against artificial intelligence for prime energy real estate. You see, the power grid is finite. Land with heavy power interconnections is finite. And AI requires massive data centers, incredibly intensive cooling systems, and immense power draw to run their inference and training models. When AI enterprises look for land and power today, they look directly at the infrastructure currently occupied by Bitcoin miners. They want that exact same juice. Let's look at the absolute mathematical certainty driving this shift, because the numbers here are absolutely staggering. We're looking at revenue density, which is the amount of money generated per one single megawatt hour of electricity used. A highly efficient Bitcoin mining operation running top-tier machines at less than 14 joules per terahash generates approximately $109 per megawatt hour. Older machines generate even less, down to about $59. Now compare that directly to the Iron Microsoft AI Cloud Data Center model. By utilizing that exact same megawatt hour for AI computation instead of SHA-256 hashing, they generate $1,107. Let that sink in. AI computing generates a 10x to 19x revenue multiplier compared to Bitcoin mining. It is no contest. AI enterprises can and do simply outbid Bitcoin miners for every single available kilowatt of electricity on the grid. When you annualize the data per megawatt, the harsh reality becomes completely undeniable. Bitcoin mining brings in roughly $950,000 for a megawatt over a year. An AI cloud data center brings in $9.7 million for that exact same megawatt. The opportunity cost of continuing to mine Bitcoin has become mathematically unjustifiable for prime energy real estate. We are seeing major Bitcoin mining companies realize that their most valuable assets are no longer their ASIC machines. Their true value lies in their power contracts, their electrical substations, and their heavy fiber optic connections. Because of this massive revenue chasm, they are physically ripping out Bitcoin miners and transforming their facilities into AI data centers. The market has loudly dictated that AI compute is vastly more valuable than hash computation. Which brings us to part 4, Pi Network absorbs demand. This is where the energy model completely flips. While this energy crisis severely exposes Bitcoin's critical structural vulnerability, Pi Network is engineered specifically to absorb this exact same macroeconomic AI demand. The contrast in their structural realities is striking. Bitcoin's model converts raw energy into single-purpose ASIC hash computation solely to compete for an internal block reward. It literally produces nothing of value for external enterprise clients. Pi's structural reality is the exact opposite. Pi uses an energy-efficient consensus mechanism, the Stellar Consensus Protocol, which leaves the node's CPU, GPU, and memory completely idle. Pi then takes that idle, decentralized hardware capacity and applies it directly to external AI workloads. It's brilliant because the very demand that increases power costs and threatens Bitcoin directly increases the value of the saleable computational resources for Pi node operators. Let me break down the hardware architecture to make this crystal clear. Take the Bitcoin ASIC. It's a single-purpose machine that does literally one thing: hash computation. It cannot run AI inference. It cannot pivot. Therefore, it directly competes with AI data centers for energy, and as we just saw with the revenue math, it inevitably loses the marginal megawatt. Now look at the Pi network model. Because the consensus mechanism is incredibly lightweight, the node computer's general processing hardware is fully available. AI threatens Bitcoin because they are locked in a zero-sum, to-the-death competition for energy. AI catalyzes Pi, however, because Pi takes its decentralized, legally protected node network and sells its idle compute directly back to those very AI developers who are desperate for processing power. Let's dive into part 5, SoloHost and node computing. We need to look at the actual technical mechanism making this possible. So, we understand the macroeconomic forces at play, but how does this actually function on a technical operational level? Enter SoloHost. This is the paradigm shift that turns a standard personal computer into a legitimate income-generating micro data center. SoloHost is not just some localized application you run in the background. It is a foundational operating system. Its primary function is to serve as the critical bridge connecting the explosive, multi-billion-dollar demand of the B2B AI market directly with the massive, decentralized supply of hundreds of thousands of active Pi node computers. It fundamentally transforms the node from a simple blockchain validator into a highly productive asset capable of processing commercial data streams. The operational pipeline of SoloHost is a meticulously engineered 5-step architecture. Let me walk you through exactly how a job flows. First, demand. An external AI client requests non-sensitive compute, something like image inference or distributed rendering. Second, routing. The SoloHost framework instantly routes the specific task via a remote gateway to an available, suitable node. Third, authentication. Pi sign-in jumps in to verify device and user access securely, ensuring everything is legit. Fourth, compute. The node actively processes the external data, utilizing its idle CPU or GPU capacity. And finally, settlement. Once the job is completed and verified, the Pi wallet automatically settles the third-party payment directly to the node operator. It is a seamless, closed-loop economy functioning perfectly in the background. Now, I want to be clear. This architecture is not theoretical. It was definitively proven in March 2026 through the OpenMind validation test. Look at the visual evidence of the AI object detection run on this street scene. 7 independent, volunteer nodes participated in this concept test. An external third-party container was deployed directly to these nodes. The transmission was confirmed in under 1 second. The nodes received the image, performed the AI inference, successfully placing those bounding boxes around cars, pedestrians, and cyclists, and returned the precise, accurate results in exactly 4 seconds. This provided undeniable, concrete proof that third-party AI workloads can be successfully routed, processed, and returned entirely outside of the blockchain's core consensus duties. However, maintaining strict analytical rigor is essential here. We have to define exactly what OpenMind proved and what it did not. It successfully proved the technical routing and computation pathway, without a doubt, but several critical elements remain unproven at a true global market scale. First, enterprise-grade SLAs, service-level agreements that ensure the 99.9% uptime and strict reliability that massive corporations demand. Second, large-scale expansion. We're talking about managing the complex orchestration not just across 7 nodes, but tens or hundreds of thousands simultaneously. And finally, job pricing discovery. Establishing the true open market rate for decentralized CPU and GPU resources that yields a consistent profitability above the cost of local electricity for the operator. These are the final frontiers for total commercialization. Let's bring it all into focus with Part 6, the new operational reality, bringing everything together. We can now anchor this entire analysis by combining the legal precedents, energy economics, and technological architecture into the immediate operational reality we live in right now, in July 2026. The fatal flaw of past decentralized compute networks was a complete lack of Sybil resistance and quality assurance. Enterprises flat out refuse to buy compute from anonymous, potentially malicious nodes. It's a massive compliance risk. Pi solves this completely through its trust layer. Pi integrates native KYC, Pi Verify for millions of human users, combined with Pi sign-in and rigorous historical node uptime data. The result is completely unprecedented in the crypto space. Enterprises can buy compute power exclusively from verified human operators with established, deeply reliable hardware track records. This node reputation system is the master key. It unlocks true enterprise AI demand by providing the strict compliance and security that B2B clients legally require. When we place these two major architectures side by side, the contrast is absolute. Bitcoin relies on single-purpose ASICs for internal hash competition. Pi utilizes general CPU, GPU, and RAM for distributed AI and data processing. Bitcoin competes viciously against AI for finite power, whereas Pi absorbs that AI demand for revenue. Bitcoin serves its internal protocol with absolutely no external customers, while Pi directly serves external B2B AI data enterprises. And from a legal standpoint, Bitcoin remains under constant regulatory scrutiny for its environmental impact, while Pi's decentralized processing operates as an explicitly protected infrastructure service under the Clarity Act. It's two entirely different worlds. And all of this brings us to a fundamentally new valuation metric for the network. We are permanently shifting from a speculative token price to a valuation model based strictly on operational cash flow. The impending launch of the top 100 SoloHost production nodes irrevocably shifts Pi from a retail narrative to a highly productive B2B asset. The primary value driver is no longer retail traders staring at charts hoping for price appreciation. The value driver becomes actual enterprise B2B AI compute budgets, where corporations are purchasing pie on the open market specifically to pay node operators for verified network processing. It is the definitive transition from sheer speculation to concrete industrial utility. So here we are. We have a legally secure framework, permanently set by the SEC and the Clarity Act. We have a massive, unyielding AI demand that is desperate for compute power. And we have SoloHost, the decentralized infrastructure ready and perfectly positioned to supply it. The convergence of these three forces permanently rewrites the hierarchy of digital assets. While traditional mining models fight a losing battle for electricity against AI giants, decentralized node networks are poised to become the very backbone of that massive AI expansion. The framework is built, the demand is clear, and the law protects it. The only real question left is, as Bitcoin fights a losing war for energy, how quickly will the rest of the world realize that the very definition of crypto mining has already changed forever?